The former ZANU PF youth leader and politician Acie Lumumba is in trouble with the Zimbabwean authorities after angrily telling President Robert Mugabe where to get off. Lumumba faces charges for undermining the authority of or insulting the President of Zimbabwe. And as a person who grew up within the ranks of the Mugabe-led ZANU PF, Lumumba joins us on the show to discuss what he thinks is going on within the party leadership and about the future of his country under the leadership of President Robert Mugabe. Acie Lumumba, pleasure to have you with us, sir.
I appreciate you having me on the show. Thank you.
And much appreciate. You've been part of the establishment in Zimbabwe. You're very much part of ZANU PF.
Yes.
Are you still part of it?
No.
Why not?
Because I belong to a different generation.
Yeah?
You know, the way politics works, Tim, is it's like when a man is approaching a woman and you want to get into a relationship.
Yes.
You make a certain particular promise. And this promise that was made to me when I joined ZANU PF was three particular things which we went to the last election with.
Yes.
And the promise was we're going to create jobs. We're going to empower and we're going to employ.
Yes.
I believed this promise, so I got into the relationship. Only to get into the relationship and realize everything I was promised, not only are we not interested in doing it, we have no plan on how we're going to do it that is actually a realistic plan. Mm-hmm. So you're stuck now between two choices. Do you stay in an abusive, bad relationship or do you get out? I took the decision to get out. So I am no longer in ZANU PF on the pure perimeter and premise that I no longer subscribed to the promise that was there and not kept. The people of Zimbabwe were given a promise and that promise was broken. I left because I no longer subscribed to how
But
we
here's the
country.
point. You know, for South Africans, most of them, it's actually a baffling thing. It's a confusing thing about what's going on in Zimbabwe. The country has been independent for a long time, and South Africans at one point looked up to Zimbabwe, the Zimbabwean authorities as well, for the attainment of the independence and the way in which it was attained, and it was a model country for what we aspire to, and a decade and a few years later, South Africa itself became free, independent, democratic, and then we've been going on that trajectory. And then we saw the decline of Zimbabwe and the system somehow getting abused along the way, and free political activity being discouraged. And one thought at some point, given the economic troubles that Zimbabwe was going through, that the country will change course and reorganize itself, get itself sorted out for the benefit of the people. So it appears economic misery continues up to now. Why is that? Why is it difficult for Zimbabwe to just get itself right? Is it still the problem of, as the government calls it, the imperialists in Zimbabwe?
The problem is one, and it's us, Zimbabweans. We cannot pin the problems of Zimbabwe on anybody else except ourselves. Now, here's how I look at it. Zimbabwe is like a company, and a corporation, and this corporation has got shareholders. Now, you have 70% of the country being young people under the age of 35 today. These are the young people who actually have to live in the future. So the equity and stake of the country belongs to them. They are the ones who are responsible for either what's happening or what's not happening. So unless they take on the tools themselves, roll up their sleeves and work, Zimbabwe is not going to get fixed. Now, there is huge and many narrations on how we got to this place. I am more interested in how do we get past this place. We get past this place when we begin to understand that there is nothing wrong with Zimbabwe that Zimbabweans cannot solve. Everywhere across you go in the world, you find Zimbabweans occupying top space in private sector, and public sector, and third voluntary agencies. Because Zimbabweans are leaders. We lead, that is what we do. But we have got to now be able to interest our young people to come back with those skills, harness them, and be able to use them to make the country grow for a country that's prosperous and fit for all who live in it.
Let me ask the question then. What is ailing Zimbabwe at the moment? Definitely you can't blame the rains. You can't blame the seasons and so on, right? It's a relatively richly endowed country. It can afford so many things for itself in terms of feeding the people and so on, and just running a sustainable, economically sustainable
Zimbabwe is the
nation.
highest per capita value as far as resources are concerned.
Yeah.
We have 25% of the world's diamond deposits.
Yeah.
We have almost 30% of the world's platinum deposits.
Yeah.
We still have more gold than any other country on the continent of Africa. So we are very endowed as far as resources are concerned.
Yeah.
But here's how resources work. Resources have what's called an intrinsic value. This is the value the resource has when it's under the ground. When you get the resource out of the ground, you have to beneficiate it. For example, when you get gold out of the ground, you have to refine it and purify it. The moment you do that, you double the price or the value of that gold. When you then convert that gold from a gold bar, from a purified gold to a gold bar that you put your reserves, you then even triple the cost of the gold. So we have to go through these processes of value addition with these resources. But what's ailing us is mismanagement. We're not a poor country. We're a very poorly managed country. But poor management comes as a result of your lack of participation. When you don't participate in politics, politics goes bad. I always say to people, the moment you become passionate enough about anything, it becomes political. Right now, we're passionate about our aspirations. Zimbabweans are tired of being aspirational. We aspire to do well. We aspire for better schools. We aspire for better roads. We aspire to be like South Africa. Can you imagine? We look at South Africa, and now we are coming to South Africa aspiring to be like South Africa. You were our young brothers. We taught you what it's like to be cool. We used to teach South Africa what it's like to be free. Now South Africa talks to us about being free.
So now, highly educated population, contributions that you've mentioned in other parts of the world on the part of the Zimbabweans. What is it that makes it difficult for the very highly educated Zimbabweans who are spread around the world to fix their nation's problems?
It's politics. There's nothing wrong with the Zimbabwean economy. Everything that's wrong with Zimbabwe has to do with the politics. You have got to remove ZANU PF and Robert Mugabe. But not that ZANU PF and Robert Mugabe are the problem, because removing them is not the solution. The solution is, what do you replace them with? So if it was your children, the question you're asking about the children is, whose hands do I want to put my children's future in? Do I want to put them in the hands of opposition? Do I want to put them in the hands of the existing party? Or do I want my children to be able to make the decisions themselves? I'll give you a practical example. Our government is in about $8 billion of debt to date. So in our GDP, income is not equal to the amount of money that we're exporting or the amount of production that we have. So we're in $8 billion of debt. Currently, the Minister of Finance is going around globe-trotting, looking for about another $8 billion to make this money come to $16 billion. So you ask the question, what happened to the first $8 billion? We don't know. What do we want the new $8 billion for? We also don't know. But the problem with this $16 billion is it has to be paid back over 25 years. And who is going to be there in 25 years to pay it? It's my kids and your kids. So the people who are borrowing on behalf of the country are borrowing money that they don't have to pay back.
But let's talk about...
So the problem there, Tim, so the problem there is the person who is going to be affected by these decisions is the young people. That's why we keep pushing as Viva Zimbabwe that young people have got to get involved in the conversations, and they have to get the bull by its horns to solve their own future.
You were part of the ZANU PF setup.
Yes.
You even worked for the government as an advisor and so on. And now you've told the president to get off. Why would you tell President Mugabe to get off? And you are in trouble as we speak, actually. The authorities want to charge you.
The authorities are charging me.
Yeah.
The authorities are charging the whole country. You must understand, when you say I'm in trouble, look around you, the whole country is in trouble. This is not a Lumumba peculiar situation. The whole country is a mess. I'm in trouble, the children are in trouble. When I said what I said to the president, it was an expression that was based on disdain, not even at him. I'm not disappointed in the president. You know what I'm disappointed in? I'm disappointed in myself. I'm disappointed that I put that man into office. I didn't just believe the president. I campaigned for the president. I voted for the president. This is a man who, when he got up, he charmed me. And I believed he has got my future at heart. Overarchingly, the promise we're looking for from our politicians is, you are going to make my life better. I believed him, I voted for him, I campaigned for him, but I left because the promise was broken.
Here's the thing, which I find interesting, and a lot of people find interesting. President Robert Mugabe has been able to hold on to power up to this point and seems like the most towering political figure in Zimbabwe. What is it that makes President Mugabe so powerful and gives him the authority to continue with whatever policies that he is continuing with?
We do. The president has got no power. We have the power. and we just don't use it because the power resides in the ballot box. So when you look at the mathematics of the elections, I'll give you the mathematics. There's 8 million people on the voters' roll.
Yeah.
There's only 3 million people who voted in the last election. Of the 3 million people who voted in the last election, there was only a 2% rise as far as young people are concerned. But there is 4.3 million young people who are under the age of 45 today who have never voted. These are virgin voters. So it's the 4.5 million people I am frustrated with because they are not voting allows the 3 million to vote and make a decision on behalf of the 4 million. So if you wanted to turn this around, we have to understand that the mathematics is simple. It's arithmetic. 4.3 million virgin voters must now register themselves, go to vote in a ballot box, and choose the leader they want. President Mugabe is the president because his people vote for him. Then the rest of the people simply do not vote.
Why? I mean, given the economic troubles, at least the ones that we hear about.
I think particularly it's because there hasn't been a plausible option. You know, Morgan Tsvangirai, who's the leader of the opposition, hasn't been on a plausible option neither, at least to the 4.3 million. But more overarchingly, it's the culture. The culture of politics hasn't been appealing to my generation. I'll give you an example. The matters and issues that are being discussed in politics have nothing to do with my generation and are things we're not really interested in. You hear them talking about land. None of us have the land, so we don't really care who you give the land to. You hear them talking about bond notes. Most of us don't even have money in our bank accounts, so it doesn't matter what's happening with the bond notes. No one is talking about town hall meetings. They want rallies where they can come and talk to us, but talk at us. But they don't want to talk with us in a town hall setup. They don't want to use social media. People think young people are not interested in politics. They are, because we're talking about it on social media. The problem is social media doesn't give you the vehicle to go there and vote. We simply have to get the system working.
You mentioned something about Viva Zimbabwe.
I did.
What exactly is Viva Zimbabwe and where would it fit in the scheme of things? And not so long ago, we heard of a movement called This Flag, which also has awakened people, it appears, enjoys some support. You talk about social media, and we have spoken to Pastor Mawarire, for instance, about this. So it looks like that, you know, it's something that's awakening Zimbabweans. What is Viva Zimbabwe?
Tim, I am an aggressive and ruthless politician. I am the best there is in our generation. You can't beat me. I've had 18 elections inside of ZANU PF. I never lost one. I don't lose elections inside of ZANU PF. I say that to say Viva Zimbabwe is the political front for young people. For 4 years of my life, I led within the Zimbabwe Youth Council, and I was the chairperson, including chairing the biggest province in the country, which is Harare. All youth associations, from religious groups to business groups to civic societies, they came together and they said, so we have our frustrations as young people, but we have no way of channeling them politically. So we need a political front. So the political front for young people is Viva Zimbabwe. So in 2018, in the next election, we will be fielding young candidates in every political seat to ensure that the decisions for the future are being shaped by young people. Rigging can happen. It is very possible, but you can rig an election where you had 30% of the election. I know how rigging works pretty well. I'm from ZANU PF. But you can't rig an election where you got 10% to a 40%. You can't do that. Nikuv is not that good. So this is what Viva Zimbabwe is pushing, that can young people realize the only person who knows how to create a TV show like this in Zimbabwe is a young person who has watched it. You can't expect these Madalas and Mambuyas to be able to know how to create this talk show. They're old, we need to put them in a home and we need to look after them.
Well, the truth is they are still in charge, you see. How old is President Mugabe now?
He's 92.
92. Still in charge, still in control.
Is he?
Well,
What is he in charge of?
Who's in charge then in Zimbabwe?
The president is not in charge, I can tell you that.
Who's in charge of Zimbabwe now?
I think Zimbabwe is on autopilot. Nobody's in charge of Zimbabwe. How do you say anybody's in charge of a country where you can't find penicillin in hospitals? Anybody's in charge of a country where you can't find condoms in schools, just like you have everywhere else in the world. Now, it seems like that's the going thing. How do you say somebody's in charge when the roads are not fixed, when the tower lights are not working, when there is no money in the bank, when there is no employment, when the interest rates of the banks are going high, but there's no jobs being created?
The practical things, given the history of Zimbabwe and the current problems that are there, you've mentioned some of them, and there are probably many more issues to be dealt with than what we've been able to probe on the program. Practically speaking, what should happen in Zimbabwe that is not happening? From where I'm sitting, President Robert Mugabe is in charge, and his political party is the government of Zimbabwe.
Thank you.
So, What changes anything?
Okay, so two things have got to happen. First, we have to go through the constitutional process of an election. At this election, the people must be educated. They must know what their citizen rights are, what their voters' rights are. So voter education is absolutely crucial, and there's civic organizations that are doing this. But the bigger picture for me is what happens when you put the new party in place. So you now need an economic driver, a new economic policy. You have to simply provide macroeconomic stability in the country. Macroeconomics is the booms and busts. Do you have a job when you finish university? So if macroeconomics was physics, it would be Newtonian mechanics. So you're talking about the way to stabilize the economy. The first thing you have to do is you have to get your own currency back. Because once you have your own currency back, you can control inflation rates. Once you've got your own currency back, then you have to lower the interest rates in banks. Because you need to be able to go and borrow money, Tim, to be able to have this show.
Yeah.
Once you borrow money, you can pay salaries, and everyone's salary is somebody else's salary. So money begins to move around within the economy. Then you have to restructure the debt. I almost feel instead of restructuring the debt, you need debt forgiveness. We're in too much debt as a country, so we're not able to borrow any more money because we're in too much debt. So you've got to restructure the debt. But over and above all, you have to level the playing field by wealth redistribution, and you do this by lowering taxes. You don't raise taxes when businesses are going down. In order to get the young girls to be ambitious enough to say, I want a hair salon, they need to be able to go to the bank without collateral and say, can I get money on the basis of a good idea?
Well, but that's when you are in charge.
That's when you're in charge. That's why I said the beginning
Yes.
is you have to begin with the elections,
Yes.
which is what we are preparing for as political parties. Then politics needs to get out of the way, because I'm a politician, a great one, but I'm not an economist. I don't know economics. Everything I'm saying to you right now is things that I have to self-teach.
Yeah, but in the meantime, the government that's in charge is still in charge. So what do? You wait until when? 2018?
No, you don't wait. You prepare. You don't wait, you prepare. I don't believe in revolutions. I don't believe in destabilizing any economies. Anywhere in the history of the world where there has been a protest that has led to a revolution, disaster has followed henceforth.
Have you ever spoken to President Mugabe?
Yes, I have.
What does he think of you, and what does he think of your views?
It doesn't matter what the president thinks of me. The point is he's the president, like you said. He's running the country. I'll tell you what I think of him. What I think of him is the young Robert Mugabe was charming. The young Robert Mugabe sold us this dream that he could move us from an oppressed people to a new people, from a country that was divided by segregation of color, of skin, to a country where it was called the Rainbow Nation. That's the Robert Mugabe I was in love with. What I think of him now is, thank you, you're done, but can we now transition into the new country? May history remember the president as the president who allowed the transition, not the president we were trying to transition from. That's what I think of the president. But what does he think of me? It doesn't matter. I'm going to beat him in the next election. That's simple. He's going down and I'm the kid who's taking him out. He's Goliath. I am David. And David about to knock that whole Goliath down.
That's Acie Lumumba.
Thank you.
Everything of the best to you when you get back to Zimbabwe.
I appreciate it.
And I hope that we will be able to talk to you in the future.
In 2 years,
beyond
we'll take over
this.
the country.
Acie Lumumba.